a fellow podcaster, Amazon insider. I think he probably knows more Amazon bigwigs than anyone on the planet. We're super excited to have him here. If you have any questions on Amazon, PPC, Seller Central, kind of anything, Danny is one of those guys who knows it all. Likes to turn dials like I do and like Amy does. And so we'd love to have you guys in here, sellerroundtable.com/live if you'd like to jump in the meeting. Looks like Andrew Craig just joined us. Woohoo. I'm going to call him out since he joined us just now. Join us live, guys, and then you can ask Danny, be part of the convo. And we are about to get started. All righty, here we go. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Andy Arnott with
Amy Weiss.
And this is Seller Roundtable number 114. We're super excited, privileged to have Danny McMillan with us. Danny, welcome. Thanks so much for being on today.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's been a long time since I see you, as we discussed off call. Didn't get to see you both in Vegas, unfortunately, because that's, I think, where I met you, Andy. And I'm sure, Amy, I see you face to face at Celicon. Were you at Celicon a couple of years ago?
I think you and I met for the first time face to face in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong.
Yes.
We was at a hotel across the way from our hotel, weren't we, with McMillan and a few of the others. And Andy, I met you in the June or July 2019.
Yeah.
So I was hoping to see you. I didn't get my visa come through. I was trying to get an exemption, being UK based, and the proclamation and all the boring stuff. I had 2 speaking gigs at Prosper lined up and 3 parties I was hosting. So we're going to move all of that. It's going to bounce over to March next year. So it's not all lost, but it would have been great to see everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, Amy's going to have to fill us in. I didn't make it this year either, just because it didn't work out with a bunch of stuff that we were doing. We're kind of getting into the Airbnb world now, and we just launched a new property, and I didn't sleep much for a month with the preparation there, just trying to learn everything. So I didn't make it this year, but I'm going to try to do some events later in the year, real estate events. And then we're also hopefully going to I might go to ClickFunnels Live this year and some other stuff, since ClickFunnels headquarters, like literally 2 streets up from me here. So I'm starting to meet all those guys. So it's pretty cool to be in that world too. So Danny, we would love to know a little bit more about your background, your street cred. If people don't know about you yet, which would be crazy if they're in the Amazon world and don't know about you, but I would love to get a little bit of background, kind of, and it goes deeper as little as you want in terms of, school, where you were raised, where you're born, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I'm originally from the music industry, so I was lucky to travel the world as a DJ record producer, and I had a show on Kiss 100 in the UK. You've got Kiss FMs in the US and in Australia and places like that. So I thought I had my kind of that exciting style career. And then 2008, I retired from the music industry and then went into the UK tech industry. And we've got an area in East London. We call it Silicon Roundabout, where there's like 200 startups or so, as opposed to Silicon Valley, which is on greater scale and stuff. So I went from the music industry into tech, and then came out of tech, lost about £500,000 on that one. Absolute disaster. The way I got into tech from the music industry, I had some from the Gold District come to me and said, right, Dan, I want to set up a online music thing. And I went, what the F do I know about the internet? He went, don't worry, you will learn. And so we made every cardinal rule mistake possible, business model, right in the middle of the recession of 2008. Spent 14 months in stealth mode to build something that no one wanted, but it was a great baptism of fire. There's nothing quite learning when you've got investors breathing down your neck and you're trying to keep people employed and working 7 days a week, 80 hours a week in a cauldron. And as I said, great learning. That's how I learned about PPC back as far as then, in terms of Google, conversion optimization and stuff. You were forced to do that. And then around 2000, between 2012, because I was involved with a ticketing business, it was on like TechCrunch. It got reviewed on there. We raised money for that. And I was working as the head of digital there. And then 2015, I wanted to reverse engineer like marketplaces. And I started off with eBay, and where I used to live, the idea was there's, you go around the house and you pack some stuff up. This is the February, say 2015. So I'm packing some stuff up around the house, February, March, packing stuff up around the house. And then I take it all to the post office down the road and get to the post office. And I realized it's shut down because I was working from home, but I forgot it closed down. And I don't drive, and I still don't. My wife drives, but I don't drive. So I'm thinking, well, that's my eBay career over, because I'm not going to get on a bus every day to sell like incremental these products. So I was really like upset, tail between my legs and stuff. I come back and jumped on the eBay forum, and then it came up in front of me. Amazon FBA, I got the tingle now, March 31st, 2015. It's when I discovered it. And I'm like, that's the one. I don't need a driver's license. I haven't got to get on the bus. And then once I looked at that, and I was like, because back then eBay didn't have PPC. That came in after it was introduced on Amazon in the UK. And because I had a PPC background, I'm like, this is great. Like, I know I had to go and find products and test stuff, but I thought there's this Fisher Price PPC system, which is a piece of piss to use, very easy and easy to manipulate. I mean, I've done one of the first videos on the correlation between ranking using PPC. There's a video in 2015 I think it was like the November. It's got like 30,000 views now. But yeah, that was one of the first videos to show the correlation. I've done it on 3 different products and on the ranking and the movement and the relationship between the sales and stuff. So that was really how I got going with Amazon. I think we all come in from a direction. I think, Amy, you have a product development background. Someone might have a branding. Mine was like, how do I manipulate PPC on a really Fisher Price, cheap, easy platform and be ahead of that curve in that sense? So started selling in 2015. Launched, I'd done some products in the UK, but then actually physically launched in the November. Once I worked out what I wanted to do and they had a platform work back then, in the November, I launched straight into the US. Then in 2017 is when I started Seller Sessions, which is actually started off as a webinar every couple of weeks. And I think you guys know as well, in terms of marketing, you've got to find the sweet spot on where it lands, and you've got to be persistent, right? So you try 10 marketing channels, none of them works bar one, say, and then you double down and you scrap the rest. And that was kind of what happened with Seller Sessions, because we were doing webinars. So we built them up, doing them every 2 weeks. So we started to build a list. The webinars started to fall over because people were checking in from hotels. And so the connections were poor. And then obviously it was affecting the quality of the content. So we went, okay, let's start a YouTube channel. So we took all the lists that we created from the webinars and sent the traffic to the YouTube channel on a once-a-week basis, growing in single digits there. And then we went, right, okay, let's start a blog. So then we can back optimize by writing blog posts on all of the episodes and just set up and put it on the blog. Single digit growth, and it wasn't until we got to the October, so that we finally decided, what a really good idea. Let's start a podcast, right? It was, instead of being the first thing, it was the last thing in the chain, because it was like the growth was tiny, and then it just took off like a rocket ship. 40% month for month growth, just went like that for 18 months, just kept growing. And so,
and what year was that when you started your podcast? You said
that was 2017, but we didn't add the podcast component until the October. And what I want people to learn from this, one is the persistence, frequency, and everything else. And you really do need to find, as a marketer, you need to find what works. So you might try a series of channels, and it doesn't mean that, like, the webinars didn't work, we didn't give up. We went to YouTube and the growth was slow. We didn't give up. We wrote the blog post and we back optimized and started sending, like, traffic got to, like, in the first couple of months, 2,000 to 3,000 searches a month, which isn't bad with long tail keywords, right? And so, but it's not enough. And you add, and then one thing kicks into play, and then you double down and you focus on what works there. And that's really when that started to take off in 2017. And then I started to speak around Europe quite a bit, and I went to Germany and I met Ellis and we set up Databrill in 2018. So I've got this algorithm expert that worked on Jungle Scout's algorithm, who's PhD, like a doctor, like a genius basically. And he came to me and he said, I want to start a PPC software. And I went, absolutely no chance. Are you going to get me going in the software world? Not. And then we had another chat and he said, and it worked out with the technology he developed. It was great. And we could become blue ocean. It's like, right, we'll just focus on people with mass amount of SKUs because none of the agencies want to touch it, right? It's a complete ball ache. If you turn up with 1,500 SKUs to most of these agencies, my friends in the space, not now, but 2 years ago, they'll be like, no, that's going to cost you 10 grand a month to manage that because it takes too much of the labor time away. Now we've got more sophisticated technology that a lot of agencies now are using third-party software, or they're starting to develop their own. We was way ahead in terms of development back then. And so I said, Ellis is like a genius. So I've wrapped the business around him, and obviously all the clients coming from the podcast and speaking on the road and stuff. So we make a good team, but I'm very lucky to have someone like him. And it was that we're very, very focused on the type of customers we have. So now it don't have to be like large accounts, but we only focus on 7-figure sellers and above. And we're pretty proud of our record. We've got 30 plus customers. We haven't gone mental and grown out like that. Our net margin is 55%. So we're very cash rich in terms of how we manage the business properly. We've had 6 exits in 14 months. And it shows the kind of caliber of the people, the companies that we take on. So instead of spray and pray and then just sign loads of people and have high churn rates, we're very focused on how can we help these people and get them to the next level. And I always sit down with all my clients. I'm like, at some point you've got to sell. You've got to take some legacy money off the table. And I said, I'm going to lose you as a client, but you'll come back because you're an entrepreneur. You'll go again and you'll give us the work on the next business. Because, we manage 25 to 35% of your business, which is the PPC end of, PPC to organic ratio. But I like to see people do well. So I always get my clients like, this is a great time. This is a market. It's a seller's market. If you think about it the right way, these multiples are getting out of control. A lot of people will tell you like the big guys won't pay more than 2.5, which is garbage. I'm seeing some massive deals going through, but no one's going to run around the industry and go, yeah, I'll pay the highest multiples because they want to get more beneficial for that. But yeah, so over the years, it's kind of grown for there. And then I think, in 2018, 19, I started Seller Poldy Awards, which I get a lot of abuse for now because people love it if they're involved in it. And those who are not involved, it can't stand with it. And it splits opinion. But I think it's important to celebrate people in the industry and make sure people get recognized, outstanding contribution. If you've got, not us, because we make sure no podcast, anything related to me is not allowed, all the votes removed, right? Otherwise, we'll probably win podcasts most of the time because it's coming through my audience, right? But we take that out because we want it separate for everyone else. But I like the fact that we can see new faces come through and we can celebrate these people. And one of my proudest things is Branded by Women as well. So we do Branded by Women once a year. In February, we're going to do Branded by Women number 3. I've got something very special I want to do with the third one because they need to go through stages. So like for me, Branded by Women 1 was look at all these amazing female entrepreneurs. You've got no excuses, right? I've gone out and found all these people. There's 40 plus people. If you're looking for people to book for your events, they're here. Here they are. Here's the stage. Then when we done Branded by Women number 2, I wanted to show the vulnerability. I want to show that women look to other women on stage and they look to them to gain influence. Yeah. Because it's a different connection between, say, a man looking to a guy going, oh yeah, I'm really enjoying those hacks. And there's a woman going, she's up on that stage and I can do that too. So it's important to get across, look, you can be super, super successful, but you still have vulnerabilities. You're still scared to ask for sometimes. You're still going to have things where you may get like some sort of complex, like what's the imposter syndrome and things like that. But what it says is like, we are real. And the people that watch these women on stage or on the shows go, I can just be like them. I'm a mother. I do all those things and I can reach those heights. So that's for me, that was number 2. What I want to do with number 3 I'm going to look at it as, I call it the integration. So we've done 2 branded by women's, but now I want to bring men and women closer together. And then I'm going to showcase some of the best technical talent out there that give most of the men a run for their money. And the thing is, not a lot of men buy tickets for branded by women, but I want to blow them away with content, super technical stuff, all by females in the space. And so they can go, right, you know, and so you're getting at what I call the integration stage. And I think for me, that is stage 3 to bring it all round, because
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be awesome, Danny.
Well, you got to try different things. I'm happy to fall on my ass and make mistakes and stuff, because I don't have any pride in that sense, you know. Like, if I try something and I put all my heart into it and it fails, I've done my best. You know, as a boxer, they say you leave it all in the ring. So I'm happy to put my neck on the block to do this, and it may not work, but I just come around, we'll do number 4 and we'll make number 4 work. Does that make sense? But I think it's important.
Yeah, I just really get excited about the technical side of things, because you know how I like to talk about those types of things, and yeah, so I know there are so many other women in this space too who can speak at those higher levels. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and so I've started to build a list, you know, and like I'm starting to bring people through. Like I had Tamra. Like for me, Tamra is a work in progress. She's from Europe. She's from Serbia. And so I put her on the show yesterday. That's her first ever podcast. But I'll put her on Branded by Women number 3. She'll be at Seller Sessions Live because she's based in Europe as well. And in 18 months, she'll be a recognized person within the space. But you've got to help the next generation of people coming through. And what I want to be able to do is, over the period between now and the next Branded by Women, I'll bring another 5 or 6 people through that you don't know, Andy doesn't know, no one knows, because I go off and find these people. And then what we need to do is, like, we need to raise their profile. So when it comes to Branded by Women, they are recognizable faces, and they've had enough work behind them that they're used to going on podcasts and speaking. And do you see what I mean? Because if you've never done it before, your very first presentation or your very first podcast are not necessarily going to come out brilliant. We know this. I can't listen to the first 100 episodes of Seller Sessions. I want to dig a hole and bury myself because they're shit. But 700 episodes later, I've got a bit better. So I can tolerate the last 50. Does that make sense? But everyone needs to be brought through. So that is when I'm doing Branded by Women. It's not that 2-3 week press run that we do, and it's an industry takeover. Like last one, we had 26 promo spots. There were 26 promo spots across the industry, 43 presentations and 4 live shows. I mean, it was overkill in that sense, but we'd done our job to get women out there and say, look at all these different people. And it's not all the same lineup from the first one. The second one is a mix of the first one, because you need that familiarity. And then you start to bring some new names from. So they're the new wave that comes through in 2021. So then we look at 2022. Who can we push through and bring through in 2022? And that's what I use my platform for. Where I've got the opportunity is to give other people opportunity to help them grow.
I love that, Danny. I've never been to one of your events. It's definitely on my list, especially since then I get to write off the trip to Europe, right? But yeah. So in terms of, one of the things I wanted to go back to, a couple of things. Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned, I used to be terrified of getting on live, right? I was just like you said, terrible, sucked, things like that. I just gave myself, and I tell people whenever I run into somebody who's like, hey, come on the podcast. Like, no, I'm too afraid. I'm not a good, I'm like, then, come back to me in 30 days. And the next 30 days, just go live on your personal Facebook profile and tell people about your day or whatever. Like just that, doing something over and over again. It's like the one thing in that book, right? They show the small domino, the bigger one, the bigger one, the bigger one. And if you really kind of dial down into that stuff, that that's how you're going to, get better. If you just continue to be terrified of it, it's never going to change. So I love that.
Yeah, I use the term progress over perfection, because I think everything we do is a live organism that we work to. Every podcast, I've got that opportunity to get that minuscule better. Every time I go to the gym and I do squats and you know, let's say I do that weekly, I want to go up 5 to 10 kilo. It's always a work in progress. So I always say to people, nothing's ever static or finished. Everything you do, Amy, you make a product. I know we've had conversations about perfection. Perfection is non-existent and it gets in the way of everything. And I'm not saying that you should do stuff, rush it and do bad work. But your best work is never your best work, because your best work is always around the corner. So what you can do is do it so it's good enough, it's acceptable, the good level, and then you carry on adjusting all the way through. Otherwise, you won't get nothing done.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing too, is when you start scaling, you know, trying to hand off tasks to other people, right? That's another big thing. You know, my wife's going through that right now with her real estate business. Is she's like, well, but people aren't me, they can't interact. And, you know, and I'm like, yeah, but, you know, then you're going to stay stagnant, because, you know, unless you start, you know, offloading some of these other tasks, you're never going to kind of graduate to the next level. So that's, you know, that's a whole nother conversation. But Danny, what I'd love to talk about is, earlier today on Seller Sessions, you know, you got a hold of somebody who works for Amazon, who kind of gave you some inside scoop on, you know, some of the inner workings, some of the stuff that's going on right now on Amazon, which, you know, if you've been selling on Amazon for a long time, you know, don't get me wrong, you know, Amazon has enabled tons of mom and pop small businesses, things like that. But, you know, just like Google years ago, you know, when the do no evil slogan went out the window, I kind of feel like Amazon is changing course in terms of, you know, having any type of compass in terms of taking care of sellers. That's my personal opinion. I'm not saying that's what Danny's, but in my personal opinion, I feel like they're really straying from what I think should be their kind of core principle of, you know, helping the small brands, bringing the small businesses out that they're putting out of business on Main Street. But I would love to hear kind of, you know, some of the highlights that you got.
Yeah, I was going to say I done in depth, but I'll give you the cliff notes, because I think it's important now we get into like the more of the content. I want to cover some PPC A9 stuff with you as well, so people get in full on content. I know we talk about some of the operations that I run, and we've overrun there, but let's give people some really good content. So I had a meeting with a contact on the inside. It's going to be an ongoing series, but what I did on my podcast is go right back to the beginning, how they're hired, weeks onboarding, all that kind of stuff. So you can check that out another time. But for me, it's because I want to go in depth with each section, talk about brand registry, verification, all that, and we'll go right in depth. But the cliff notes for it is that seller support, most of them don't, as we know, don't have any experience. They do 8 weeks training. Of that 8 weeks training, that only gets them to FBM level, right? Before they can touch FBA, before they can touch GTINs or anything else, brand registry, they have to do 2 weeks on each of those. Some of the real core things that we've people discussed in the past, and it's been unproven until now. So they've got Paragon, which is an AI system that they use. So when these bounce back emails come in, these are not automated. Every ticket is checked. It's just they've got an option to choose from on the Paragon CRM system, and it gets better and learns over a period of time to make better suggestions for them. One of the things that we can do as sellers is when we're writing our descriptions in our messages, there's a few key things, is that making it keyword rich, a bit like with listings that get flagged for certain keywords and stuff, you know, especially when someone's used a flat file, etc. Is that if you be very specific, bullet point everything, and make sure it's keyword rich, because then that will then get partitioned off to the right department based on the AI. That's key. They get 17 to 18 minutes to work on per ticket. Okay, so if you've got something complex, either your ticket gets seen and people get pushed to the side, and this is where they snag the tickets and they become they get put into like a line, if you like. Let me tell you the terminology I was looking for. I'll come back to that in a minute. Monitoring tickets randomly. Yeah, so they'll become a ticket that ends up being put into like a timeout, if you like, where it doesn't kind of get resolved. So it's really important that we are descriptive. And most people are descriptive. So I'll tell you this stuff and you might go, Dan, you're saying all this, but I write mine are very descriptive and all I get is these crappy bounce back and everything else. So bear with me. A couple of key things there as well is very clear on the tickets, keyword rich. They suggest that, you know, we raise tickets. The best thing to do is instant chat or request a callback. Now, Tal jumped on in the comments on the podcast. He says, I raise a ticket, then I'd request a callback, then I tie the ticket in. So great. But if you want to get stuff resolved quickly and more painlessly, we do know speaking to anyone on the phone is an obvious one. But a lot of people do raise tickets and don't bother using instant chat. And so whatever way you tie it in that way. The other thing is if you're, say you're in sleepy Spain and you're in Europe, or you're in somewhere like Italy and you're Italian, but your English is very good, set your account to English and write the tickets in English. And the reason you should do that is because the whole company only operate in English internally, right? So every ticket you write in English, it means that if you're in sleepy Spain, you haven't just create a section where no one can serve, well, only a tiny amount of people can serve that ticket. It means anyone who speaks any language and their preferred language is English, on the back end, the whole system, all the tickets that to be dealt with internally when they're annotating their files are all in English, so they can share those tickets across. What else was there?
So Danny, real quick question. You mentioned use the right keywords when you're writing up your seller support ticket. So that they're pulling the right responses for you, or the most accurate responses.
No, but they've got to be delivered to the right department as well. So if you want to go to the catalog team, right? So everything will go, like, so you've got tier one, tier two, and tier three. Everything goes through tier one before it's then sent on to tier two or tier three. I'll get onto this captive team thing in a minute, because that seems to be a bit of a myth as well.
So my question for you though is where should people find those keywords? Should they come out of the terminology that's used in Seller Central? Should they use Amazon policies? How should they find the right things to write up the right words?
I tie in a couple of things there. One is that Amazon get annoyed, and I'm going to come back around to your point, is that no one uses the search function. It's rich with information, but we just raise tickets. Like, how do you do this? Well, you could search and find it out. They get pissed off with that. But going back to your point, if you're looking for the right terminology, whatever your ticket you raise, do a quick search, and then look in there for, most of the time you can't fully resolve it, but look in there for Amazon language, and then put that in the message, which will make your life easier when you raise the ticket. Because you could actually maybe share a URL. I'm saying this on the spot because we had done this earlier on today. You take the URL of that page and say, look, I've gone through this page, but it's not clear and it's missing X, Y, and Z. And then obviously put it in your title and stuff. I haven't tested it yet. I want to be able to build an SOP and see if we can test by, like, do we duplicate keywords and stuff like that? How does it work? What kind of response we're going to get? And I know it's going to be hard to manage because it's AI, right? So it can give you variance upon variance upon variance. It's not like a locked system. So all I can say there really is keyword rich. And the other thing is, when a ticket closes, you know, like, you get annoyed, they close the ticket and then you reopen it and send it again. Most of the time when a ticket gets closed quickly like that is because they don't know what to do with it, and there's not the right language that's specific enough to go to certain departments. So they close the ticket, but you get annoyed and open the ticket again and send it through, and it goes through the exact same stream, the same workflow. All it's going to do is end up being closed again. So think about why, when it gets closed, read the ticket again and think if there's a bunch of changes that you can make. Because if you make the changes, you've got more chance of it then hitting the workflow again, and then maybe landing in the right place. I mean, it's still a bit of a lottery, but keep opening the same ticket and sending off the message saying that you're pissed off because you keep closing it will only send it around in this infinite loop all the time.
Makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I've noticed too is I will open different tickets in, you know, when you go through the initial ticket process, you have to pick a category and a subcategory. Yeah. What I'll do is I will open two simultaneous, almost every time now that I've learned this works really well, is you go two simultaneous. I know, like you said, Danny, Amazon might hate this, but if you actually are trying to get something done, you go and pick, you know, the first one you do is the one that is in the category that makes the most sense. Then the next one you go is to something that's maybe part of the problem, but not the main category, and you open a ticket there as well. I've found that, you know, because you have now kind of two separate groups working on it, one might hit a wall and the other one might find a solution, or vice versa. So that's another kind of little trick that I've found out over the years with all the hundreds of tickets I've had to open.
Yeah. So here's another thing which is quite interesting. There is no financial incentives for associates. All the targets are based on efficiency and quality of where they have met the correct standard, right? So on the flip side of that, if they don't meet the targets, they will get closely monitored, right? So it actually becomes more painful for them because the QA teams are going to be more and more on their back to meet certain standards.
And that
But
also opens up that opportunity for them to earn other money elsewhere, which is what happened when a bunch of the support reps were caught in this, you know, where they were doing certain sellers favors. And so it's like kind of bad that they don't get any kind of monetary, you know, compensation because their pay probably isn't great. And,
well, on the
and
flip
you know,
side,
that kind of sets that up.
yeah, so the reward of being efficient and good quality is the opportunity for lots of promotions. It's always encouraged. So that is your upside. So whilst you don't get a financial there, you'll get out of tier one, say, yeah, T1 of Seller Central, and then you quickly get moved up if you're good and excel what you do. But yeah, you're always going to get people on the take. Now, this is the thing, and I don't want to tie it in with the people that are on the take because they're good and bad people on this planet, as we know, right? But when there is an issue with a ticket, like let's just say an ASIN's been yanked, with that as an example, as a ticket, they can log into your Seller Central account. So any of these reps can access any of our accounts, but purely based on the condition of relating to a ticket. Now, what you would say, well, what happens when reps are working from home? Because a lot of them do, they're distributed. They have a token system, which is all generated on fingerprint ID. So with the home systems, they're very secure as well. So I want to make sure that people understand that that's clear. But I found that kind of interesting as well. And the 17 to 18 minutes. He's annotated this here. So that's something, how a ticket is broken down, if this is any help for the audience. 17 to 18 minutes, right? So there's 4 parts to a case ticket outcome. 1, pending Amazon action, PAA, in case Amazon needs to perform additional research and the seller needs to wait for the outcome. Number 2, pending merchant action, PMA, more information is needed from the seller to be of support. The current information provided is limited or incomplete for us to proceed as support. Number 3, resolved case is done and resolved, or the conclusion is that Amazon point of view, we cannot be of support whatsoever reason, and we need to inform that the seller that we cannot resolve this. Number 4, reply and keep working. This is used with more time is needed to perform research and want to notify the seller in the meantime that we're working on it and we'll come back to them as soon as we have an answer and reply. So you've got a key thing there. The other thing is that annotate each of the tickets so that everyone is in singing from the same hymn sheet. They use all the same SOPs and everything else. Where is the ticket information I was going to tell you about? Annotations are added to open tickets. So this is what goes on your ticket as you do it. Number 1, summary of the seller issue. 2, research done, which workflow followed. 3, ASIN, order numbers, info plus SOP URLs followed for troubleshooting, which means they've got that catalog of the SOPs and they put that in the case ticket, the URL, so whoever picks it up can go to it. Plus they've lots of tools used, like this guy that I'm speaking to who's been there 3 months. He's now using 60 seller tools to support at his skill level, and he's only been there 3 months, and there's a lot more tools involved in that. Tools and TT troubled ticket. Number, when escalated ticket has been created by an associate. Number 4, propose action taken, summary or reply question to seller. So think every ticket that they do, they have to annotate that ticket in 4 parts. I think someone said about a while ago, because one of the things I want to go down the road of is performance team and stuff. You might not be able to get much from there, but I remember speaking to people before who do a lot of the suspension reinstatements and stuff. They were always talking about annotating. Like, so if you got an account and you kept sending the wrong information, it gets annotated. That's going to mark hard against you because you've not paid attention to the point they may not be able to recover that suspension if you push too many times. So just be aware is that everything we do, they're being monitored And also every ticket raised has the 4 parts to its summary and the problem solving issues.
That's crazy. You could really go down that rabbit hole for a long, long time. There's so much there. The other thing the quick point I wanted to make though, for everyone listening or watching is I used to, everybody hates filling out surveys or even those little things, but when you get us, make sure that you leave positive reinforcement for the agents that give you good support and negative for the ones that don't, because Amazon uses that feedback loop, and all that will do will support sellers better, right? If you get people who suck and they weed those people out, then that means that next time your ticket's going to be handled by somebody who's been reviewed positively or has gotten positive feedback. So I encourage you guys to do that. I used to never do it, but the last couple of years I've been doing it just because I'm like, I need to provide feedback loops so that so Amazon can actually take action on the ones who perform well and the ones who don't. So that's my ask and suggestion to you guys. So
there's one thing I want to quickly tell you about.
Sure.
The frustrated button. I haven't checked yet, but he was telling me, because I didn't get a chance to check, and I don't know if it's fully correct, but I double check with him for next week's show because we're going to do another one. But he says when you have problems and you've raised the tickets, if you hit the frustrated button, right, the frustrated tickets are higher ranked. But some people, like Tal was saying, I haven't seen the frustrated button. I haven't looked yet, but I'll get that confirmation. And if that's true, if there is, once you've raised the ticket and you've got, like normally go, was this any good? Yes or no. If there is a frustrated button there, if you are frustrated, hit that, because apparently they'll rank frustrated tickets higher, which is something I didn't know about. And the captive team thing. Do you remember a couple of years ago, people going, we're going to call the captive team. And then you phone up and no one knew who the captive team was, right? Now, we don't know if it's true or not, but the captive team might just be made up. It doesn't exist. It just might be a posh name for tier 2 or tier 3. And there's no such thing as a captive name, but it was a really good word to use, a buzzword, if you like, if you're selling masterminds. Do you know what I mean? I think, and things can come up into the Amazon sphere that just don't make any sense. Maybe not true, but it could be true. But he's been there only 3 months. So I'm trying to get him to dig and see if there was ever a captive team going back 3 to 5 years.
It's interesting. I think there was, or like you said, Danny, that might have just been kind of what people called it. But I know that there was, I went to college in North Dakota without going too far. And a lot of people don't know this, but Amazon has a big foothold in North Dakota. And so I used to have phone numbers because I had friends that worked there like way in the past. But in the past, you would have these special phone numbers that if you knew, you could actually call and get somebody on the phone. Like I used to be able to call the catalog team directly. Like a lot of those direct connection numbers have
catalog team, but
have gone away. But even that though, they've gone away because Amazon is now the word gets out and then it's useless because it just gets inundated, right? Same thing with Jeff at Amazon.com. Good luck using that these days because it's like the word was out that's how you could get a quick escalation.
This is the other thing. I'm like with the shows, I have to be sensible. If he turns around and gives me a bit of information and that tens of thousands of people jump on and it's just going to flood. It doesn't help anyone. What I'm trying to do with the series is really educate people on so that they can take away from the shows and go, do you know what? I'm going to write my ticket like this now. I'm going to be extra nice to this person on here. Oh, to resolve that, if I go to this, I want to give them all the ideas of like, how can we create an SOP of creating the master ticket? What is the most optimized way of developing a ticket to get the best result possible, rather than saying, here's the captive team, if it exists, their telephone number, and then blurting it out on seller sessions do you know what I mean? It would just, it's a point. It doesn't make
absolutely.
sense to do that.
All right, guys, we're going to switch to something else. But if you want to learn more, make sure you subscribe to Seller Sessions. It is one of the better podcasts. I've listened to many. I think Danny does a really great job. So go check that out. Great info there. Lots of great people there. It's on all the major platforms. Go check that out. Let's transition though, Danny, because one of my favorite things, which is some of your favorite things, is algorithms and PPC. So in terms of the A9 algorithm. I would love to hear kind of your insight and maybe some of the ways that you think that it's progressing and maturing and changing. I would love to dive into that.
Okay, so effectively what I did is a few months ago, I dug out I found it. I started with a video and which is Doria Sonica from the A9 team. And then I started to find research papers like Amazon.science. And what I'd worked out is A9 works completely different to what most people talk about. And once I got hold of the information, I sat down for a few weeks and going, how can I turn this into layman's term? Because for you, Andy, we can geek out on it. I'm not a developer, you are, but you'll go, yeah, this is great. But for general listeners, they've got to try and understand it. So I thought, how do we take this, which would normally send a glass eye to sleep, and make it more plausible? So we broke it into different sections. But the key thing that I find with A9 is that it operates differently to a lot of the way that people talk about it. And so when we look at a listing, we think of title, bullet points, blah, 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 right? But we don't think of, well, how did it get there? We know that the conversion rate makes an impact. We know that add to cart is massive, but add to cart only works as far as page one. You need keywords with sales to bind past the top of page one. So we know that add to cart is a massive, massive signal. But when you break it out, like for instance, no one was talking about negative and positive labels. So when you think of negative and positive labels, if you're looking at your listing, you could be saying to yourself, well, we have a conversion which is on a continuum. If someone lands on your product page and they stay there and they don't bounce off, there's a micro conversion, like a credit going on there, because the engagement, you scroll, you're engaging, right? You add to cart, it's another signal, you're engaging. So you've got to think of conversions on a continuum. The biggest thing I took away from all the A9 stuff is Amazon is obviously about relevance, but they want to know just as much about what you didn't want to what you did, right? And what that is, that it falls under, these training sets fall under negative and positive labels. Now, positive labels is clicks, add to cart, engagement, and things like that, different, and it's all derived around behavioral aspects as part of their training sets, which make up as part of the algorithm. So when you're writing your listing and you're saying, I want to write the feature benefits and everything in the bullet points, you would think about it from a copywriting point of view and a human person reading it point of view. But if you took it into a 3D mode, you'll then start to think about it from a negative label and a positive label point of view. And then you start getting into things like the hunger score, which is very complex for people to really understand. But hunger score, you could consider that is FOMO. So what the hunger score does, it searches down by category, but it's looking for the stuff that you are not interested in, don't touch. And I think what that really is about is that they're trying to unearth if there's anything they've actually missed. So they're collecting all this information. So it all comes down to relevance. You've got on one side, you've got the positive label, the other side, you've got the negative label. Let's look at another reason why the positive and negative labels would work. If you're sending traffic, PPC traffic to a listing, we now know that if you send traffic there and the conversion rate is poor, that's going to have a negative impact organically, right? Goes back, negative labels, positive labels. What is under the negative labels? Well, it's unseen. It's why is that information not being utilized there, etc. So when you are looking at optimizing your listings, think about it. Will this fall under a negative label? Will it fall under a positive label on top of what you're already thinking about when you're optimizing a listing? So it goes back from being a static vector, if you like, that here is our listing, it's very static and we're looking at one-dimensional. Let's look at it from a three-dimensional point of view. We know that most of it is based around machine learning. It goes back as far as 2016. They was using 100 machine learning models. We know the importance of being page run. I'll give you some data here. 70% of Amazon customers never click past the first page of search results. Then you've got 35% of Amazon shoppers click on the first product featured on the search page. Yeah. And the first 3 items displayed in search results account for 64% of the clicks. And this is why PPC's come to more for Amazon as a pay-per-play. So it's a great model for them to earn money, because everyone who was ranking organically up here, they're being pushed down. They're in like the active position on the page, not the organic or the ad position. You know, organics is sitting down in position overall of number 4 and number 5. So a lot of the PPC clicks, so top of searches could become more expensive. So this is why it's so important to dial in. The other thing is, if we take some stuff off the table, there's no such thing as A10. It doesn't exist. It's not in any of the science literature. None of the engineers that I've spoken to have talked about it. And just to give you one quote from Amazon here, small improvements in relevance can positively impact millions of shoppers. If that's the case, why would you take A9, throw it in the dustbin and dial out A10? You wouldn't. And it's not structured that way, right? What other people don't realize as well, it's based down catalogs, indexes, categories, each marketplace. So when we see a push or we observe something and we see listings have a shuffle, if you like, you go, oh, right, it's an algorithm update. That isn't happening in the UK when it's on the US. That's not happening in Germany. These training sets and these periods that they're measuring this data in, they collect that information, all the behavioral data, then they're going to do the push. And when they do the update, it's on that marketplace. So it's not global. All of these teams are working differently on the different marketplace. So indexes and everything are different. Relevancy is going to be slightly different to marketplaces, but overall, they, yes, are using the full structure of A9. And this is why add to cart works so well, and it will carry on working so well for a long period of time, because it's such a machine. You can't you can't steer the ship round and start going, oh, well, we're not going to use add to cart no more as a really strong signal. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So this is something that's developed over time. And I think it's really important that people think about. Go on.
I think my key takeaways from kind of your sum up of the A9 algorithm is that, number one, we need to think about more than just, okay, I have the right keywords, I have the right keywords and my listing looks good. We need to be thinking about our products from what page ones we want to be on. I'm always talking about that. I'm like, what's your page one? Because of course, top of search is so important, but the right search is so important, right? We want to be the most relevant so that they add to cart, right? So that we can get that going on. So I'm hearing that, with the ever increasing cost to get to top of search, it's more important to really, really dial in, like, what are those search terms that customer that is so relevant for your product are going after? And, I see people are just even more successful now. We recently had some really great folks come in and talk in our mastermind group about this ranking strategy that they're using. And they're really focused in on some keywords that are the most important, and very few keywords to begin with. Before they're moving on to others. So I think when we're thinking about our keyword strategy and our advertising strategy, now more than ever, we really, really need to know what our page ones are and make sure that we're paying attention to how customers interact with our listing. Not only our conversion rates, but where are we converting? How are we converting? When are we getting that awesome add to cart? What about you, Danny? What do you recommend for people in really reducing their costs for their PPC and choosing the right keywords so that they can get the most out of the algorithm's favor?
I think the newer people are definitely burning their money because they're getting these massive long keyword lists from really great third-party tools. But if they're not in the brand analytics report, most of it is junk, is garbage, right? So I always say to people, take your long list of 100 or so, wash that list against your brand analytics report. You might find there's only 5 in there. And so you're chasing and pushing all of this data around on hundreds of keywords, which are mostly useless because they've got less than 10 searches a day or less on the US market.
And when you say brand analytics report, are you talking about putting your ASIN into that search terms report and seeing where you have the most click share?
Or your broad keywords. It doesn't matter if it's ASINs or not. What you're looking for is, do my keywords appear in the brand analytics report? Let's just say you sell beard oil. So you'd put beard oil and then you look at all the different permutations of beard oil, organic beard oil, blah, 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 right? Men's beard oil. And then you start to see them and you see the frequency rank, that's one's 12,000, 16,504. And you're looking for that. But what I'm trying to get across, what can be very scary for people, we know that the US market has great long tail. And it's good to have long tail. There's no doubt about it. And it makes up sales. Brandon Young does some really good stuff with that in the way that he operates. And I totally agree with it. But what you got to be careful of, if you're not at Brandon's level and know what you're doing, right? You might have misgivings thinking, great, this tool's just given me, it's got 100 keywords. I've got plenty of opportunity. You put it through the brand analytics report. There's 4 of them are in there. Then your opportunity's gone from, the other 96 has disappeared. You've got 4. Are you going to have also ran keywords? And then you dial in on 1 or 2 and you might not be able to afford the PPC on it. Or they may be so far back that even if you run PPC on them, you're not going to get enough sales velocity to get anywhere with those keywords. Great. You might be on page 1 because this, it's got 20 searches a month, but that's what's useful as a chocolate ashtray. You need to get that balance right, because if the keyword's too big and you run PPC on it, you don't get impression share. This is why people get $20 a click, and then they spend all this money and they don't realize. They go, well, this keyword, because we have like a calculation on. Do you want me to quickly go through a quick calculation to give people when they're looking at keywords? Because I think it starts to bring home.
Absolutely. And the other thing quickly I want to mention, just I think what Danny is saying, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Danny, is rather than go after the 1,000 keywords, these tools are spitting out every iteration, and what they literally do is get the keyword, then add an A to it and do a search. And then you might get 1 or 2 sales a month from those keywords. But the other thing you have to realize is the more keywords you have, the harder it is to manage, right? It's the 80-20 rule. If you have, exactly, 1,000 keywords, then having to go through and try to optimize all those keywords is going to be really difficult, rather than really focusing in on that precise target and then just continuously optimizing those keywords, those small sets of keywords, and even on your products, your product targeting, etc.
Would you mind if I share my screen? It might be a bit easier just to give.
For sure.
Would love that.
A bit of context. All right. So let me just pull this up. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
So I've just mentioned here, never go beyond the brand analytics report. You might, there's an exception to the rule, and you're going to get some people go, yeah, I had a few sales, but generally if it's 10 searches a day, you're looking 300 searches a month. By the time you get into position 1, 2, or 3, a percentage of that is the click-through rate. From the click-through rate, how many sales you're going to get off that when that's shared against other people on that page? Not a lot, right? So you've got to think about it that way. This is what I'm going to give you an example of here. So ranking with Amazon PPC, right? So if your PPC is competitive conversion rate and generates enough orders, it would definitely boost your organic rankings. Here, each bar represents 1 week's worth of data over the period of 8 weeks. So in the left column, we see the average organic rank, right? And then where the smallest bars show rank 1 is as good as you're going to get, because it's gone from, it's gone from up in the gods to position number 1 over a period of time. So we've got organic rank number 1 on the first column, number 2 on the second, and number 1 on the third column. Each of those, as I said, represents 8 weeks as you see them coming down into the number 1 position. So you can see these move quickly towards rank 1 over the first month here. The remaining columns, we see impressions, orders, and spends. These are mostly trending upwards, possibly plateauing after the first month or so. So you can see impressions, as the organic rank comes down, the impressions increase. As you can see that, not exactly, but it's heading that direction. And then you got the orders column and the spend column. So you can see the top one is where we spent most of the money, but we got 219 orders from it. Now, in order for stuff like this to work, 1, you've got to be dialed in on your keywords, right? And 2, your listing should be very well optimized. This conversion rate plays a massive factor in the success. As a bad conversion rate will become a hindrance to your organic rank, pulling you underwater every time you send non-converting traffic. Like I mentioned earlier on the show, conversion works on a continuum. So the algorithms are the multifaceted view of a conversion rather than what we see as a sale, right? When the customer clicks on your product, you're effectively getting a micro conversion credit on that query. If the customer spends time on your product page and does not bounce off, you're getting another micro conversion. The more time is spent on the page, in principle, the higher the engagement. And when the customer adds a product to cart, again, you're getting another positive signal. So I'll skip this abandonment stuff at the moment, but where's the breakdown? Right. So in order to set this up, you guys know this, very, very basic setup, but you can do this across multiple campaigns. But one keyword, one ASIN, one campaign. Isolating like this means that we can measure the top of search on a granular level, right? Because for sponsored products, top of search placement statistics is on a campaign level, right? So that's why we'd set them up that way. So going back to the algorithm here, the ranking algorithm compares many different factors. Two of them, order history and the conversion rate for a specific product listing and that said keyword, right? So they're all attuned in from those two components down to that individualized keyword level. This is then compared to all of your competitors on the same keyword. If you get a higher conversion rate through PPC sales, then you're gaining points on both of these metrics. In what we've seen in-house, your relevance will also get a boost from this, but then we face the problems with ranking high velocity products, which I touched on before I set up the slides. This comes back down to the ranking algo. There are only so many ad positions or placements worthy of eyeballs, which is obviously on page 1. So for a high velocity keyword with established ASIN of already converting, it could be extraordinarily difficult to break through and get impressions, even with a phenomenal conversion rate. This is why you hear people bidding $20 a click without getting any impressions. So depending on your stamina, and if you keep going over time, Amazon's algo may determine to favor your campaign, but there's no telling how long this will be. It could be that one or more of your competitors go out of stock, and that's where you get to sneak in, right? Again, this is where it could give you a nice booster. So what is the answer? Is there a special calculation? Well, the answer is yes, no, and common sense. So these are arbitrary numbers here, just to make a point of the demonstration, right? So what we have here is K1 is keyword 1, K2 is keyword 2. This represents the ad placements, P1, P2, P3, okay? So you can see that keyword 1, super high velocity. We've made up the numbers here to make them stand out, right? So if you was going for placement 1, you'd need to sell 1,000 units a day to get to placement 1. You're not going to do that, right? It's unrealistic. Placement number 2, 500. Placement number 3, 250. Again, pretty much unrealistic unless you've got deep pockets. Then you look at keyword number 2. So you're looking for the sweet spot, right? You're looking for the mid-tail keywords. Then you go, okay, where is the low-hanging fruit? Well, position number 4, I only need 5 sales. So if we use the data points here, how many orders a day can a top of search placement generate if expressed at a 20% conversion rate? So to get to position number 4, you might aim for at least 5 orders a day, right? So it's more plausible to reach. If your conversion rate is 20%, that might mean 5 orders a day divided by conversion rate is equal to 25 clicks. So if the cost per click is $5 for that position, it will cost you $5 divided by conversion rate, which ends up being $25 per acquisition on average, or $125 per day. But that's only when it converts, right? Which comes back to the point of gaining impression share and the cost of running expensive top of search campaigns. And usually a market that is red hot, generally we have a higher cost per click. So how do we launch PPC and then taper off, knowing where our numbers land for break even? Because this is kind of difficult. So we kind of come up with an options here, but they all present themselves their own pros and cons, right? So if we look at either way, you're going to need to pick your poison, adjusting the bid out of the gate. So if you make bid adjustment, this will almost certainly affect your ad position in the ad placement algorithm. So what you could do is start putting back on the daily budget versus decreasing the bid and maybe losing on the position there. At least with the budget caps, your campaign would run in most cases. But if you lose advertising for the rest of the day after your budget is burnt. So what I mean by that, if you adjust the bidding and you're in position number 2, you may come down to number 4 because you've adjusted that cost per click bid. But if you adjust the campaign cap on a daily basis, you'll get those positions, but you will likely to run out of budget at some point in the day. So that's why you play with the budget on the daily basis rather than touch the click, because you want to maintain the position. But you could have a hybrid version. So twice a day, you manually adjust the top of search, boosting your campaign. So you can go in, boost that to 900, then 12 hours later, drop it to 0. And then you work out a sweet spot. You play around with those two factors and find that sweet spot. And then over time, you start to get your ranking costs under control, or you don't, because it's always a risk, right? So you're looking to rank mid-tail keywords, let's say, take 4, 6 to 8 week period. By the time you get to 8 weeks, you're looking to do the pullback process.
And Danny, I'm always surprised at how many people don't know about placements and how to adjust those percentages.
Yeah. So there's many ways to skin a cat, as we know, but that's one way that we're trying to present something that's quite complex and there's way too many variables to say this is the absolute way around it. But by working off an assumption of a calculation at 20% and using ad placement as your reference, it may help people that going after really big keywords realize I can't go after those keywords, because a lot of people won't do that calculation. They won't sit there and think, oh yeah, in order to be successful with this and start using that keyword to rank, I mean, I need to get 50 PPC sales a day. That's really hard. Do you know what I mean? Like when you don't think about it, especially if you're starting with 0 campaign history. So you've got no conversion history. You've got a newly launched listing. It's no wonder you don't get the impression share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's why you have to be realistic and start with longer tail keywords and work your way up. Let's use the beard oil analogy. Beard oil will be the #1 keyword, but what about if it's organic beard oil? So you'd start in your campaigns with organic beard oil and try and rank that. And then as you start getting traction on that, you drop off the organic and then you target beard oil because you've got relevance there from the organic beard oil and you've got conversion history. So what you do is you use the longer tail until you narrow down to the head tail. It's just as a basic example.
Yeah, Danny, I love all that, Danny. And yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize, and this is some of the stuff I've been trying to train people on for a really long time now, is, you know, just because it's the top, most searched keyword does not make it the best keyword, right? So I'm going to give a quick example here. So
yeah,
I'm going to go let people know if you're not new at this. I'm going to give a little bit of background. Bear with me here in case you're experienced here. But so longer tail keyword generally has a greater conversion, right? But less sales. So higher conversion, less sales. Mid-tail keyword, you get kind of a middle conversion, right? You get a decent amount of sales, but it's still not the top keyword. And then a primary keyword has actually a lot of times will have the lowest conversion, right? Because it's not specific enough. So some examples here: longer tail keyword, blue water bottle with straw, right? And then a mid-tail keyword would be a blue water bottle, for example. And then a primary keyword would be the base keyword of water bottle. Now, when you think about this in context, okay, if you're going on to Amazon and searching just you yourself, and you go in and you say, I want a blue water bottle with a straw. If a blue water bottle with a straw pops up in, the top 3 results, most likely your possibility of getting a conversion on that sale is really high. Now, if they search for a blue water bottle and you're one of thousands that of a blue water bottle, but there's, they're not searching for one with a specific straw or a top or anything like that, you may get the conversion, but it's a lot less likely than that more specific search. Last but not least, if somebody just types in water bottle, they're in explorer mode, right? They're not necessarily ready to buy that water bottle. They're going to click through and go, oh, here's a blue water bottle with a straw, and then they'll go back to the search bar and say, I want a blue water bottle with a straw, and then convert on that keyword. So that, I just wanted to really make that comparison, because a lot of people, I think, always try to go for the top tier keywords, and that's where they end up just burning through a ton of money and not getting a lot of results.
Exactly. And when they burn that money, they haven't got the opportunity to rise again. You get very little room for the maneuver is when you make a mistake on a launch product and you're new to Amazon, right? Because let's just say you've got 15 to 20K, you burn through that very easy. $3,000 on PPC can be easily done. And you don't get another shot if you haven't got the money to sustain those kind of losses.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but a lot of people don't realize a lot of times the first week or two of PPC is literally research, right? It's literally you're spending money to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of people think that they're going to just be successful out of the gate. So just some basic things guys to think about when you're kind of testing if you're being successful or not in PPC. I see it over and over again, people dropping in, after a couple of weeks saying, yeah, my ACOS is over 100% and, I'm getting killed here. I'm like, that's in the research phase. That's not uncommon. That can happen, especially if you're in a super competitive niche. So,
and I would love to just add, the biggest mistake that I'm seeing people make is using advanced PPC strategies taught by people who know what they're doing on brand new products with huge keyword lists on products that have not indexed yet for relevancy. And so what ends up happening is they spend that whole budget and they haven't indexed properly. And as you mentioned, Danny, you lose your chance. And it ends up costing you more to relaunch and try to regain your traction, because now you've told the algorithm, oh, I am all of these things, and half of them you're going to get bad data for. So it's like, oh man, I'm seeing that people are applying these very advanced strategies, and I'll take a look at their campaigns and they haven't ranked first or become relevant to the algorithm first for those super relevant medium to long tail keywords that are going to help them get that initial boost that they need.
The other one is, which is difficult to measure, is, and it can be achieved, but you can't reach statistical significance with it. If you've got only long tail, let's say you've got a stack of long tail keywords, and you run your business based on that. Like, in order to reach statistical significance, you need to reach a threshold, and you have a time period set that you measure over. You can't measure conversions over a 9-month period and put that in as a statistical element that is going to be a modifier for your business. It just doesn't work, because there's too many different variables there, and there's too many seasons that are taking place in between. So it makes it very hard to manage accounts that way if you only focus on pure long tail without any mid or head tail, whatever name you want to give the two upper tiers keywords, the description.
absolutely. All right, Danny. Well, we've just proven that we have to have you back on so we can dig into more of this stuff, because I know that we could all geek out on this stuff for hours and hours and hours. I know I could, especially the PPC and algorithm stuff. That's what I love to turn dials on that stuff. But in the meantime, tell people where they can get a hold of your content, get a hold of you, and kind of what's next for you.
Cool. Yeah, just sellersessions.com, visit there, add to the podcast. If you need to get hold of me, email danny@sellersessions.com, or if it's Data Brill related to PPC, danny@databrill.com. Right now, I'm just, I said off call, I won't go into too much detail, but I'm booking out a load of gigs at the moment for next year, just working on that. We've got Seller Poll, which will come up in September. So Seller Poll number 3, Branded by William, will be ready to go for January next year. A lot of the stuff I'm working on now is actually for next year, so I won't be able to say too much about those things. I'm trying to get Seller Sessions Live sorted, because it sold out last May. It's there. I've just got to deliver the event, but the problem we've got is the issue with COVID. So until we put the US on the green or amber list, the speakers can't travel without quarantine, because it's 14 days, and I can't expect them to do that. And most of the lineup are from the US. So that's one of the frustrations at the moment, is because what's been beautiful about the US, like Amy, you went over and did Prosper, right? Great, got together with everyone. It was good. And, I know that a few people got COVID, but that's to be expected, right? This is, people got to get together. The world's got to bloody open up at some point, and we just be as careful as possible. But yeah, it's we haven't had that chance to do that in England yet. So it'd be nice that day comes round where everyone can fly in and we can put on a big event, big happy family, learn some content, go out and party, and human contact, I think, is so important. Engagement of human contact.
Absolutely, Danny. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you being on. Like I said, we got to have you on again. If you guys haven't done so yet, check out Seller Sessions. Like I said, awesome podcast. Danny has some great guests. They go deep into Amazon. So definitely check that out, guys. And as usual, if you haven't done so yet, please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. We really appreciate all the feedback you guys give us. We try to improve the best way we can. We try to bring on people that you want, go into topics that you want to hear. So if you want to reach out, please do so to either Amy or I, and let us know if you guys have any ideas on who you want on the show. As I mentioned earlier, you know, I'm in Idaho now, and this is I didn't even know this before I moved here, but this is where ClickFunnels originated, and I'm starting to get to know some of the guys around here. So we are going to have some ClickFunnel people on the podcast here, some higher echelon people, which will be pretty cool. So we'll be announcing that soon, guys. And as usual, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to do so live, sellerroundtable.com/live. Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you next time on the Seller Roundtable.
All right.